We are now live and up on YouTube.
All right, welcome everybody to our second meeting of the Administration Public Works Committee for October. Generally speaking, tonight, we have lots of budget conversations as it's that time of year. So why don't we start off with our roll call?
Chair Farmer,
Here,
Vice Chair Edens. Here. Councilmember Rhodes,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Albers,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan. Here. Councilmember Jaxi.
all right. With that, we don't have anybody in the room. I don't think we have anybody as an attendee for public comment. So I don't know if anybody in here wants to make a public comment or we can just move on. Everybody online good? Cool. All right. Moving on, we have the approval of our minutes from our meeting a couple weeks ago. Anybody has any questions or concerns about them or would care to make a motion? I would appreciate it.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm being a little new to this. I tried to contact Larry after last meeting, but never reached him. I was impressed by his knowledge of the financial situation. And he referred to this going on for 2 years. And I was wanting maybe clarification of that. And then I also wonder, what was his name? Tony, what are we paying him for?
That's a good question. So we will get to that here in just a moment.
Okay.
I don't know, that doesn't really have much to do with our minutes, so if anybody
Oh,
cares to make a motion, Ed, you want to make it?
I made the motion.
Mr. Marshall makes the motion. Anybody care to second our minutes? Ms. Edens will second it. All those in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone abstain?
I'm gonna abstain because I was not here for the meeting.
All right, Ms. Nines abstains. The motion passes. With that, we don't have any information items, but I think that's probably a good time to answer some of your questions, Mr. Alpers. So,
Yeah.
what would you like to know first?
well, what's the history, I guess?
Larry, do you want to do the history or you want me to break it out here?
Well, I'll just do a little bit of it. I guess one thing that I'd like to point out is Tony Scroy's role for the city as a treasurer. I think covers many avenues with respect to our financial accounting. And I brought Tony up to the mayor as a candidate when Larry McGowan had to resign. And I was very excited about Tony taking the position, and I still am. I think Tony will do a great job. So if, I was not in any way, shape, or form, I disagreed with Tony, but so what? But Tony's a really good guy, and I'm still really excited that he is involved, because I think over time and near term, today, tomorrow, and in the future, I think Tony's going to do a great job for the city. And it is, he gets a minor amount of money that's not going to change his life. But I think he has a lot of background in financial services, more in the back office, but a tremendous amount of experience, I think, that can help the city. So, Joe, maybe you could give the other part of the background, because I know
I just thought most of the things Larry was bringing up last week should have came from Tony.
So what I would say we've kind of found over the last couple of years is the conversation we're having about the investment strategy and things like that is it's just kind of a different conversation than I would say even, Larry McGowan, who was there prior to that. Like, it's not really something that I think has been thought about. When Steve was our treasurer, I don't think it was thought about. So
Okay.
it's kind of a new, I don't know if it's a new way, but it's a better way to look at these things. And so I think we just want to make sure that we're getting it right
Sure.
before we get too far down the road. So it is something that Larry brought up a couple years ago that we've been working through, and I think it's like everything else we do around here, we should spend the time to do it the right way rather than just going with, well, that's how it always worked, so let's go ahead and do it.
I just throw 2 cents in there, so unfortunately, I've known all of the treasurers. That's not their job. So that's kind of the reason we use outside consultants to do that. Their job is to come in and make sure that the administration process is working right. And has always been that. So it's never been one of an investment strategy, or we'd always go outside to consultants to do that. So.
Okay, well, I figured there was clarification. I didn't want to bring it up when he was here. So I thought I would try to.
Kind of serves as like with your,
Yeah.
he serves as another internal control. He's outside of the staff body. He gets access to all the bank statements. He
Right.
reviews each of them to ensure that everything's on the up and up.
Okay.
And he's been good to work with. We'll say that.
Okay,
All right, anything else, sir?
I'm good.
Okay, moving on, our first, I'm sure, very exciting part of the conversation will be the review of the 2025 administration budget.
All right, thank you, Chair Farmer. So I wanted to quickly note before we jumped into each one of these expenditure operational accounts for each of the different departments that utilizing these numbers, we are balanced on the operating side. It's a little different when it comes to capital. We'll talk about that tonight. But when it comes to our operating account, we are in the black, which is good news on that front. So these numbers you see tonight are reflective of a balanced operating account for the general fund. So first we'll jump into admin, which is the first component, then we'll go to city clerk, but just wanted to have a quick couple overview items here. You do see a pretty decent increase in the amount of salary, the money going towards salaries. That's because we did bring on a full-time employee and we only had to pay for half of that employee this year. And next year we'll be paying that for that employee for the entirety of the year. Going down to operating.
2, right?
Yes.
Mike and Gia.
Well, no, that's not under the ad.
Oh,
Yeah, so that would be under public works.
Yeah.
So then, we've actually run off quite a bit this year, but
Cool.
some of them are replacement. But okay, so yeah, in that case for admin specifically, we're looking at approximately, adding a full-time employee over the course of a full year. Down to operating expenditures, did want to quickly note that insurance rates have gone up pretty drastically, and we're trying to prepare for that. Because we were a little caught off guard this year with a 14% increase. So in this case, they have told us and warned us that it's gonna keep coming. So we wanted to make sure we had enough funds set aside for the insurance side. To make sure we keep our MOPERM, our Chubb insurance that we have for our property insurance, all on the up and up. We also have a little bit of an increase in the maintenance for the building. That is more of an operating maintenance, not necessarily big capital projects, which we'll talk about on the capital improvement sales tax fund. But that includes just individuals coming here for HVAC work, our technicians that come in for doing some work on the elevator, anything that revolving around fixing something in this building that's not a big capital expense, will fall under that. So we found that issues are kind of stacking up here at the building. So we're wanting to have money to address the smaller things. So that's one item. I'm scrolling down a little bit, and this is on page 8. You go to the service contracts, the big increase there, we currently use a software system called Tyler Tech for our, we currently use Tyler Tech for our accounting software. It's in code, and we're using a model software edition 2012. It's hosted on a localized server.
I
And
was gonna say, Tyler Tech sounded so legitimate.
well, Tyler Tech is, a lot of municipalities use them. It's not a poor company, but I will say this, though, that there's an issue because they're going to be expiring the 2012 edition. So if what we're going to do, it's going to cost $14,000 more per year, but it covers our courts, covers our the entire operation. We're already paying around $39,000 right now, and we'd be paying approximately $53,000 under the new cloud-based non-expiring system. Yeah, so it needs to be done. If we don't do it, then right now we don't even have disaster recovery for our financial accounting software.
So I would just suggest that, I mean, it doesn't make any difference really to me who you guys use, just make sure that like after 12 years, that's the actual best option, because $39,000 for a 12-year-old computer system is mildly insane.
Oh, that's included, does include parks and us, but yes, I mean, it's more so for the maintenance of it.
Yeah,
and-
no, I get it. I'm just saying, like, there's been an awful lot that has changed in 12 years,
I
so
don't disagree
I'm
with
sure
you.
Tyler Tech is up on their stuff, but let's just make sure.
All right, so that's component there. Other than that, we also see a slight increase in the special events. That's the entire budget we have for like doing things for the staff. And we've kept that around $3,000 a year, and that includes, if you wanna have, the mayor has wants to do a pizza party with staff. Our Christmas party, our Christmas lunch that we like to do. There is a slight increase there of 2,000. I will point that out, but I'm more than happy to change it back, but I do think, we always seem to be having to cut corners when it comes to appreciating staff, so I wanna make sure we have enough funding there to show them that, hey, we do appreciate them and we appreciate everything they're doing, so we can have more of those types of events, team bonding exercises, things along those, so it's not just clock in, clock out. It's another one, just wanted to point out there. Also, gas went up this year, so you'll see an increase there. And then our litigation contingencies, we actually might not have any of the contingencies that come back at us this year, which is a good thing. But that really covers the small lawsuits that come up that may not be covered. So I won't get too much into the details, but those do come up from time to time. You want to have some type of funding set aside because that's not covered under your standard agreement with the attorney, and that would just be calling them or something like that. If they actually have to go file suit, that would be under that litigation contingency. So in that case, we're not expecting to spend all too much this year. But we have had instances, as you can see in 2022 and 2023, that we were active in that regard. Other than that, the consultant cost, the whole 31,000 is our legislative consultant, covered there. The city newsletter is 53, covers 2 editions, the biannual Gazette. Currently, our communications and economic development manager is going through with our printer to see if they could find some cost reduction, to maybe see if we could either produce more or, but it is this, I kind of look at that account as, if we can save money on our biannual Gazette, make it smaller, something along those lines, what can we do with the rest of that? So in that case, it's the same as what we're currently paying. We've paid 53,000 for the biannual with what we're currently doing. So in this case, trying to make sure that we can make it cheaper and add maybe something on issue or have we're talking now about potentially boosting and enhancing our website, not website, our e-newsletter, to use a different software for that. So there's a couple different things in mind that we can utilize, and that would be the account it would come from. On top of that too, part of the admin budget will be redesign of our website. We're trying with the current company that we have. It's free. So in that case, it's not free. We have to pay maintenance costs on that host it. But in this case, they're not charging us any additional funds to go in and upgrade. You're gonna see it's gonna look different. It's gonna look more like a 21st century website. We expect to have that done in 2025. But that overall covers the admin operating. More than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Mr. Marshall.
So tell me again why the legal contingency, you popped it up to 50 after 2
We've
years,
had it.
only 25.
So we've had it at 50 before. So we originally had in 2024, we had it at 50, and that's just based off in 2023, we ended up spending 58. In 2022, we are at 73. So it all depends on,
We had things that carried over from year to year
yes.
in those particular years. And in this particular case, there's nothing carrying over.
I can't speak specifically to an instance, but right now so this would be regarding lawsuits against the city
Right,
that are
yeah.
not covered under our insurance. I can't get into the specifics of why we would need it, but in that case, I mean, tonight's the night to do it. If we would like to revise that number down, more than happy to.
I just think that the logic is all I'm questioning. And again, until you see the whole budget, you just question it. It doesn't seem like a lot, but if you don't have the reason and there's nothing pending, then it seems silly to have another 25,000 sitting there if you don't have a good reason for it. So
I agree. there is a reason for that.
Okay, well, then I'd just be prepared to answer it when you do present it to the public, because somebody will ask that. So I just think as long as you have a pretty good answer for it. So,
Yeah.
It's good.
Anybody else?
Another dumb question?
Yes, sir.
So with all the technology changes and things like that, and we're recording the meetings and that type of stuff, any looking into what AI can do to speed the process up? What you could do from taking the recordings and having them transcribed so that all you have to do is go through the actual notes and clean those up? I just know in my other life, we do a lot of that, and it just really cuts out a lot of the retyping stuff and trying to figure out who took the minutes for that or what to do with it. So I'm just curious if there's anything in your long-term plans of
We've had like
streamlining it.
brief discussions about it, but it is kind of a weird, and I would be more than I think AI is gonna be instrumental to doing a lot of different things, but it's been kind of a taboo item for people to talk about. I would be more, if there wants to be direction, I could draft up a policy for the utilization of AI for our city. I'm okay with that, but I'm talking with the team, I know that it's like a taboo topic, like, do you use AI to assist and help proofread your items? It's people have this, and it is more from anecdotal experience, they have like, is this plagiarism type of experience? Cause they're like, oh, if I'm having AI do the work for me, what am I here? Kind of deal. So in that case, I do think you're exactly right. I mean, they have AI now that, I was actually being shown from the mayor that there's AI that can take 2 documents and actually create a podcast off that.
You can run a video through it, it'll transcribe it in
Yep.
about 15 seconds.
So in
And
that,
it's quick, and if you say, I wanna change this, you look around, it's done already. So I'm not trying to tell you how to do it, it's your job. I just think that we have a lot of people doing a lot of stuff that's putting stuff into records that I think AI would be a way to streamline some of that. I'm not saying get rid of people, I'm just saying that I think it could be more efficient if we were to look at that.
I can do that.
All right, anybody else have anything else? Larry?
Yeah, I guess a real minor item, but just that, there's the supplies for office. I guess it went down and now we're expecting it to go back up. Is there a particular reason?
Just general supply, oh, 1 second. So typically. So typically it's, yeah, and it's more so looking off past data. So in that case, I'm a lot of the times these numbers are based not only off the original budget for 2024, but I'm looking back pretty much all the way to 2019 when preparing the budget. And typically we spent around $15,000 to $16,000 on supplies here at City Hall. So that's where the number came from. That being said, we've been a little bit lucky in this case in 2024, where we've had some of the supplies already there. So this includes paper, this includes ink, this includes everything that, keeps the building running. I do think that we could probably reduce it a slight bit because we're trying to go a little bit more paperless at these meetings. So that being said, I mean, for ink itself, I think that could be dropping.
Yeah, I was just, like typically if you're gonna see, like maybe there's more substance to, maybe the litigation contingency going up and so, but typically if we see a change, I would think there should be substance to the reason, even though this is a very minor amount, but like Ed said, you start putting it all together, 3 or 4 here and there before you know it, maybe we could have put another 100 toward erosion or something. So, yeah, it'd be nice to just see a specific reason why there's an increase or decrease regardless of the category. So like a 30% increase in personnel, you basically say, well, we hired 2 people. There's a reason, and those were conscious decisions. But it's a small number, but they all add up. I was just curious as it seems like it went down, it's going up, but there's not necessarily anything in particular driving it. And I'm fine with that, but it's still 30% increase. So, all right, thank you.
All right, anybody else? I I just have one for the newsletter. Are we like locked into doing 2 newsletters, or is that giving you guys the freedom to do something else if that is what?
So yeah, it's not locked in at 2 different newsletters, but it provides the funding if we were to do 2 newsletters at the exact same way, we'll have it, but that was the whole discussion we had. I wanted to have that account be also open if the council were to decide, hey, let's go to 1 newsletter and do something creative. It would then leave funds, and then hopefully we can cut off a little bit of the costs that are gonna be hit against the account, just with paper choices and things along those lines.
All right, so then you need what, a motion to approve?
Yeah, for admin, a motion, and let's, I mean, we can make any changes that are discussed tonight. That's the purpose of the next meeting. In this case, I will say this on the office supplies from 2019 to 2023. We have seen approximately that 14 to 15 with some change. And then also in that case, this year, we're using the mid-year numbers. That was where we were at as of 6/30. You don't get the full picture until you actually get the end of the year. So the main thing is we might see that creep back up. But at 6/30, we had spent less, but typically the most of the spending that the city has is going on June, July, August, because that's when we have the most amount of work that we're doing.
Yep.
So that's just another note, but I am more than happy if you want to try to decrease that. That's what tonight's here is for. I mean, I can go in there and bring it back to council that way, and I won't. I'll provide 2 copies if needed, then we could show what changes were made at this committee.
I mean, I think I heard Larry, correct me if I'm wrong. I just think having the logic as to why we're jumping up or down a certain amount is really what's important.
Gotcha.
And if we can sharpen our pencil on it, great, but I don't know that that's maybe a line item we can highlight if we need to find $1,000.
Gotcha.
That sound good, Larry?
Yeah, that's fine. It's nice to have, like a little narrative as to why a number's moved, and actually even a number staying constant. It's nice to have a little bit more than, well, that's what it was last year. I mean, it might be an acceptable answer, but it's always nice to have some substance next to a number. So, all right, that's good. Thanks, Joe.
We need a second.
We need it first.
Oh, okay, I'll make the motion. And just as a sidebar, we used to have, and I think it was always in the way the mid-year adjustment was. It used to come with a reason and then
We did
increase
that.
or decrease in parentheses, yeah, so, but. I just want to say, I felt like we were implying that we had really sound reasoning for the contingency increase, but perhaps some of that was close up. Go into detail, that's what I gleaned from your comment.
Yes, and that's exactly.
And so it may not come back in written form, like everybody is kind of saying they want because it's closed in nature. So I just want to throw that out there.
That is the main reasoning there, and open to decreasing it, because the thing is, I mean, if we ended up having something where we needed that money, I would come to the council and say, we need the money, and they could apportion it at that time.
I would rather have it as projected, and then if we don't need it, surprise, we get more money at mid-year.
Yeah.
So my motion stands.
All right, so we've got a first. Anybody care to make a second? Mr. Albers makes a second to approve our administration budget for 2025.
Yeah, approve it, at least complete the committee's review and then forward to the full city council for discussion.
Great, does that work for you? Okay. All right, all those in favor of pushing this item forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving on. We've got our city clerk budget.
All right, thank you, Chair Farmer. In this case, the election expense, I'm waiting on the city clerk to provide a little bit more information on that to give the actual reasoning. But in this case, each April, we do have to pay money towards that, and it seems like their prices have gone up too, and that's what we ended up having to pay this year was around that 22,550. So that they had told us that that's where we're gonna be at next year, but that's what we paid towards actually holding the election. I'm looking into that, but that is the number that we had paid to the county this year, the Board of Elections. In this case, it's still maintaining 2 individual employees, a deputy city clerk and a city clerk. And we are also seeing real quick, a couple other ones that the supplies is another one that traditionally we do need a new office chair. for an individual, and those typically do run about $400, so that's where that increase comes from. And then the codification cost, we do use when you look up our code online, that's where that expense is. We're paying the service Muni code. So in that case, this one's a little more straightforward. There's also monies in here to replace a computer for an employee. But other than that, mostly everything else is pretty consistent from last year, other than some additional training opportunities for our city clerk.
All right, any questions or concerns?
Motion to approve and proceed to council with recommendation.
Yep, it'll be kind of copy and paste.
Anybody care to second?
And
Yes, sir.
I do apologize. I did not mean to say training of the city clerk. The training budget, that encompasses your all's training budget as well. So if you go to any kind of seminar, if you go to the MML conference, that's where those costs are included. And in a good sense of things, we're seeing more people participating, which is why that increase. Sorry, I meant to say that.
So I just have yes, ma'am. Well, I was gonna just ask, so with the election thing, is that to be on the ballot or to have the election here?
So that's what I'm looking into, but it's not to have it here. It's to have, we have to pay in, it's something that we like fund the Board of Election or something along those lines. That's what I've looked into it. I've asked the city clerk to get back to me with just a little bit more information. It is a payment to the county though, which
It's when you want to have a special election, costs you about $14,000. So if we said we want an August event to put it on the polls on the ballot, it's about 14,000. So 22 is your regular April municipal election. I don't think we're charged anything for
so
the
that's, yeah, and that's,
presidential.
okay, so that's where, okay, never mind.
I'm just guessing here. I know the way it used to be, but when we would want to do a special
So
election,
it's for us to just.
it would
be on
cost
the
us a
ballot.
city of Wildwood election. There's a fee for that, for us to file our stuff, and so in this case, it's gonna be 22,000.
So that's literally to get, and that's where it was from the April election. And how they said it, it's free if you do it at the November election, but since you do it in April, the
The
municipal
municipals
election.
have to do it in April, so that we always have to pay for that April election. If we elected to do one, like when used to do the primaries in August, several times the cities had things they wanted to do, but that cost you about $15,000 to add one issue to the polls for that one election.
On how they said it originally, and like I said, it's something I wanted to just get it more broken out expense wise, but they had said that you're practically paying the workers that come in and set up and do all the verification, things along those lines. So you're practically manning the ship for them to run your city's elections for the April. in that case.
Yes, that sounds weird.
Can I still ask a question?
Yes.
I just wondered what encompasses miscellaneous. That's a big jump, and I just wondered what's under miscellaneous.
So miscellaneous, we've had a couple instances this year. This was something that the city clerk and I discussed. Miscellaneous, she was wanting to cover more of the board and commissions dinner budget. So that was a piece of it. There is a little portion in the planning and parks budget too, but she was wanting to take on a little bit more of that within her budget. And then on top of that too, we've had some guidance from elected officials to get certain gifts and things like that, not gifts, but fair going presents, if you will, to say, hey, like the jackets, so those types of things. And in that case, that does come out of the city clerk's budget because it's going straight to the elected body.
All right. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor of pushing this forward, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No abstentions. All right. Next up. Courts.
Biggest expenditure, this is still maintaining a court administrator and maintaining more of the assistant court administrator in this case. So we have two full-time employees. The other individual that works for the assistant to the prosecuting attorney is under our police budget. In this case, the main item you're gonna see increase is that service contract item, and once again, that is tied directly to upgrading our accounting software to move it from the 2012 version that's currently hosted locally to our 2020 to the cloud, an SaaS software system. And that is the main component.
Any questions? Larry.
Yeah, I guess the employee health benefits, it seems to be a higher percent to salaries and maybe some of the other budgets is, and plus it's up or forecasted to go up 20%. What's going on there?
So in that case, the way the health benefits are calculated, it's based off of it should be based off the individual's, sorry, Mr. Bruce, let me just look at this real quick. That one has spiked up a bit. I do know that sometimes like certain conditions can go into it, but let me check that one and we can put that in the motion to check that. I want to just go see, because we have certain equations that go into it, and it could be based off like certain pre-existing conditions and things like that, but that affects the whole plan, so it should be consistent across each. That could be a typo.
Okay,
Anybody got anything else? I'm just curious, and I'm sure the courts do great, but like, it might be worth looking into whether we might be better served outsourcing that, just because I don't know, just a thought.
We can definitely look into that.
Okay, all right. Yes, sir.
I just think on any of the benefits, Thomas, maybe a great idea would be as you go down through the different departments, the number of people that are full-time and what the benefit calculated, because it does look like it's around 20,000 in one group, and then it looks like it's about 25,000 in another group. Just so that I think it would just avoid getting into that conversation when you try to get through the whole budget. So just like a cheat sheet for the benefits on those things are up or down or whatever. Would make
The
it a little-
benefits are, like, the cost for the benefits are increasing. That does look that looked high to me, so.
Yeah, but when you look at two people in a department and it's 50, whatever, it's 58,000, and then you go over and you see another where you got 138,000 for six. You kind of look at it and wonder, but I just think it'd make it easier for people not to have to ask you questions. And kind of give you a chance to lay it out there, because everybody knows it's going up. The factor is, it should be up consistently.
Yeah.
Or if you're moving people from one department, then just put a footnote there, so.
Yes, and I do apologize for that. This one, quite frankly, that looks like a typo to me, quite frankly.
Love it. Okay, all those in favor of moving our court budget forward, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Moving right along. Public Works. I assume, Mr. Brown, you will be telling us all about your budget.
Do I have a choice?
No.
I mean, you do.
I'm certainly able to do that, Thomas, if you wanted to jump in.
Feel free to go, and then I can add in, meeting.
Chair, Farmer, council members, the administration, excuse me, the Public Works budget for 2025 is presented for you tonight. I guess I had a couple comments I was going to make relative to the overall budget. In terms of kind of big picture goals, that I think are worth mentioning. If you want to talk in specific about any of the line items, we can certainly do that. There's not a great deal of changes, I don't believe, overall to each individual line item. Generally, we take the last year's budget, we look at the expenditures for the current year effectively. And that's probably the single biggest data point that we use for setting the budget for the next year. But then we also tend to look back, as Thomas referenced, 3 to 5 years to see what those expenditures might have been in terms of making decisions for the next year budget. But this year we were lucky to add 3 employees, one of which was a new employee, our new arborists. So we've got a new team, and I'm very excited about the team that we have in place now moving forward. We've got some capabilities we didn't have previously with our arborist on board. And with our new public works specialist, Dustin Howard, he's a GIS trained individual, has a Bachelor of Science degree in Geographic Information Systems from Ohio State. And he's very well versed with GIS. And he's already doing some really great work in that area. And I think it's gonna be helpful for us moving forward to be more proactive in terms of managing our assets, and specifically getting more proactive in developing plans for the future. And first and foremost, one of the goals that I'd like to get him, and he is working on it now, is basically a pavement management plan. So we've got a better idea of what roads we're gonna resurface going forward and what we're gonna do next year and then the next 5 years, say. And just having that data on hand, knowing exactly the quantity of pavement that we have, the type, the condition of it. That's what kind of drives that ability. So he is already making some nice maps and bringing a lot of data to our fingertips on our computers with his skills. So I'm very excited about that. We can also use a lot of that data, and one of the things he's also focused on is just tracking complaints. So getting better at tracking the complaints as they come in. I think we've struggled with that, frankly. I'm aware that they haven't always been addressed as well as they could have been. And we get bombarded from a variety of ways, emails, phone calls. Now we get them through MyGov, which is the intent, obviously, with that program. But nonetheless, in the day, you've got to track it. You've got to be sure you're accountable for getting it responded to. And so he's been helping in that regard as well. So those two areas I think are really helpful. And then Brendan Maher, we promoted Brendan to essentially a position, a project manager, a public works project manager position. And the goal there was to be better at managing our projects. And I want to say Brendan's doing a great job for us in that role. I'm very pleased so far. He's doing a good job of tracking projects. A lot of that is just simply schedule and budget. Making sure we're getting the right things done at the right time and tracking the consultants and frankly, the contractors and the work they're doing for us on our projects. So I think he's going to be a great help in making us more accountable for our project schedules and budgets. And there's definitely some room for improvement there. So very excited about that. And then with our new arborist, Mike has been doing a great job. We've equipped him in his pickup truck with tools, ability to water, a big watering tank that fits in the back of his pickup truck. He's got a chainsaw. He's got some small tools that he can use to quickly address problems that he sees as he's driving around. He's very knowledgeable, obviously, in that role, and it's been great help to us. And I'm very optimistic going forward. And I think in terms of maintaining a lot of the landscaping that we have and the mowing, frankly, we do a lot of mowing. We spend a lot of money on mowing. So those are two areas that I'm kind of focused on. And I think we can maintain our landscaping to a higher degree and then hopefully look to be sure we are spending our money wisely and getting the best out of our contractors. So just having someone in that role with that ability to have that attention to detail on those items is really huge for us because we haven't had it in the past. So I can't say I've ever been more optimistic than I am now relative to our future, because I just think we have a great team with the right skills in place. And I think it's gonna generate some good rewards for us coming down the road. So that's kind of I think it in a nutshell in terms of the big picture. If you'd like to talk about any of the specific line items in the budget, I'm happy to try to address that. Thomas, did you have anything in particular you wanted to?
No, I'd make just a quick note that we did reduce the salt budget a little bit because we did just get a large shipment of the salt. We do have a similar amount budgeted to actually remove the snow this upcoming year. That being said, it is one of the more tough things to budget for is snow and salt, because you don't know how much you're gonna get. And the problem is, if you put a ton, we've had a year, you go back to 2022, I think it was almost $600-something thousand we spent removing snow. If we were to plan for that every year, we would be shooting ourselves in the foot in other departments, because that doesn't happen every year, we have found. And also we had to be in a situation where, you would be losing 2 or 3 employees just to pay for snow that may or may not happen. So in that case, if we start seeing years right now, 2022 is an off year. In between then, We just got a large shipment and we do believe that we should be able to cover it. We do still have monies budgeted for that salt, but that was the main item I wanted to address.
Right, yes, he didn't.
Okay, I'm excited by your optimism, Director Brown. I have two questions. The first is because I know we worked for a while to get to the point where we were able to hire an arborist. And I know that was strained to send engineers out to look at trees when they could have been doing other things. Are there opportunities that you see that we need to start talking about as a council in terms of that 5-year plan for additional staff to hire next year? And then my other question is piggybacks. Are we to the point where, because our private contracts have gone up in some areas like mowing, maybe there's a labor shortage where we would just be better suited hiring individuals ourselves and having them on staff for some of this? Is that where you kind of see us going?
Well, I think there is some desire for us, at least for us to evaluate that, and I think Thomas might want to speak to that more than me, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to it, Rick. So the main thing is, I mean, our operating's pretty tight. It is difficult without finding, more traditional revenue sources. Without introducing anything like that, it would be very tough. We'd have to cut some services. We'd have to cut back on some of the things we do as a city. So in that case, it has been difficult. We've kind of ballooned in that regard without adding any external general revenue structures for our operating. When it comes to grass cutters, there probably is an argument, and maybe so. The problem is keeping those individuals busy year round, and I think that's what we're gonna come to find out if we hire, 3 to 5 man crew to mow grass. I think you'd probably save a lot of money, but you would also lose money because in the winter, they're not cutting grass. So it'd almost be like you almost have to find a real Johnny on the spot kind of person, and you have to find 3 of them, or 3 to 5, I would assume. So in that case, it's something that we can definitely look into as a plan, because that would subtract from our service contracts. The main thing is we have days that we start and stop with our service contracts. So we typically start cutting in early April, and we tell them, we're coming up on it, November 1st, we're gonna be stopping pretty much all cutting, unless it's like a phone call, like, hey, it's bad in a specific area. There is some value to that. But we could definitely look into what would that cost differential be? And also what would be the issue of, the main thing is, we wouldn't want to be in a situation where we didn't go out to get a bid and we weren't able to hire enough staff, because it most likely would be something that's seasonal for that type of work.
Yeah, and my question would be, what are other cities doing that hire seasonal staff that have like 200, 300 employees, like that St. Peter's or Chesterfield has different groups of maintenance? Because maybe they've already found a way to deal with it, and maybe they wish they had our model instead because they can't find people, or people don't show up for work, or they quit in the middle of the season. So maybe it doesn't make sense at all. I'm just curious because our private sector bidding has worked really, really well for a long time until it doesn't, if there's not enough, service providers in a market and inflation. And so I would just love more information for the future. I think that's continue what we're doing this year, but I would really like to know the department's opinion. And then my other question, I did send an email about it, but it may just be coming from the line item where I appreciate you leaving the Strucker Road sidewalk in there, but I know we've talked in the past and met with the Turnberry residents as well, but also the Crosswick lighted crosswalk could have come out of the Strucker sidewalk budget. So that one was already pre-budgeted, but we decided to wait to bid those 2 projects together. But the point was so that bid would show up on this, but I can't find where the Turnberry entrance.
That's on the 2024, it should be.
The gate?
Yeah.
Might have put it on the end of the year,
It's in the
Councilmember
capital.
Edens, but,
It's on the 2024 capital improvement sales tax fund expenditure budget and projected year end. You have an item that says Turnberry Place Gate. It's count 460-64.
Okay, I missed it because I thought we told them it had to go under the 2025 budget. Okay, I feel better. Thank you.
Tracy?
I just had a question on the overtime. Are we projecting that much more overtime this year?
Well, that's some of the issues with it. I mean, at the end of the day, there are some of our employees that are not exempt. So exempt employees, they're salaried, they're not getting paid to be here, and quite frankly. But we have when those events that we have outside, it's the team. They're putting it together and any individual that's hourly is getting overtime and we've found that it's taking time to put all that stuff together. So in that case, we're getting more help from the team, but they do have to be compensated if they're working over 40, which almost every week they are. So yeah, yes.
That was mine on the overtime, the same thing, but I guess the other question would be is because we are getting to some of these, and again, I'm sure you can get back in some of the old notes and stuff. We've looked at this over the years, trying to do stuff internally. First thing you're gonna see is workers' compensation is gonna climb up. We pay very well and the insurance load is very high. And then where do you store the equipment? Who maintains the equipment? So I mean, we've gone through that a lot and looked at some of the other cities and most of the other cities would love to have what we do. I mean, you manage those vendors and try to get them. So it's a tough one. But I just think that the whole premise of what has been tried to be done in Wildwood is use independent contractors. So you don't have, when things go bad, you don't have people laid off, you don't have the equipment to be replaced and so that I think that if you want to do it, that would be great, but look at all of that stuff because the benefit cost and the insurance cost and the vehicles and the maintenance will go up really quickly in order to do it.
It will, and that, I mean, at the end of the day, that's, should be look at what our expenditures are. Typically, it's personnel that's taking up the majority of our expenditures. So when you add personnel, that's why I say right now, we can't add anybody because
It's kind of like when we talk about doing salt on the roads, it'd take like 70 salt trucks or 5 contractors. Well, do 5 contractors and they do it over a period of time. So I mean, I just think that some of that, and it's not just could you do it better and for less money, it's the long-term effect of the insurance and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So those are my questions for the overtime and that.
All right, anybody else? All right, then we would need a motion to push forward our public works budget. And seconded by Zedens. All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Passes. Next up, combined road and bridge fund.
All right, everyone. So in this case, the road and bridge fund is a little bit of an interesting one. It's our asphalt, the main costs that are going into this. Our asphalt replacement project, our concrete street replacement project and our asphalt resurfacing project are the ones that really make up the majority of this each year. These are the items that you're not necessarily reconstructing the road. You're just going in and replacing deficient areas and really, I mean, for example, last year and this year we had West come in and they redid a lot of our asphalt. And then we actually we stopped a little short, which is why you'll see there's a little bit less. Mr. Brown could probably elaborate on this a little bit more. Next level construction. We didn't spend the full 1.3 million that was originally anticipated budgeted. So we did have West come out and they did the majority of their work. Actually all their work. Center Avenue, I recommend going down there to take a look. Shepherd, along those lines. But Mr. Brown, do you want to add anything to specifically those 2 contracts that we go out for?
Not in particular, this budget is, I think, just 25,000 greater than last from this year, so it's not a sizable increase by any stretch. Hopefully that does not continue, frankly, but so we are budgeting the same amount for concrete street replacement and asphalt resurfacing as last year. Those are the 2 biggest items in that budget. We have some general line items in there like traffic safety improvements, roadway, stormwater. Those are items that we typically try to address with needs as they are identified during the course of the year. So if we do need to spend money on roadway safety issue or a gate, that can be used in the traffic safety improvements if we see that as a good use of that money. Stop if there are any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions? I've got one, which I don't know that it's necessarily, well, it's kind of budget related. Is there a methodology between if we were to switch a concrete road to asphalt or use asphalt instead of concrete on something?
Well, So in most cases, our residential streets, the older residential streets are concrete, right? So as a general rule, we have not overlaid those streets with asphalt. We have tried to patch, and then when the slabs deteriorate to a point that they need replacement or the deteriorating that level, we replace the slab with a new slab. That's kind of a philosophy on how best to maintain concrete streets. Some municipalities, and I believe St. Louis County to some degree has gone and overlaid their concrete streets. And frankly, we're gonna do a little bit of that with our Manchester Taylor project that's gonna get started here shortly. So Village Hills Parkway, south of Manchester, is gonna get resurfaced. Taylor Road's gonna get resurfaced too, frankly. So it's more of a philosophical question in terms of how do we want to address residential concrete streets? And once you start overlaying them, we'll be back in probably 5 to 10 years to overlay them again. And then still, we frequently have those slab failures below that you have to address as well. So I'm not convinced that's necessarily an approach we want to take, but I think it's something we need to probably think about more carefully going forward. Because our streets are definitely getting older. As our subdivisions age.
Okay, anybody have any other questions? Mr. Marshall?
So Rick, several years ago, Rockwood School District went in and started using that white asphalt, like up at Crestview. And the idea was it a lot less heat, and school buses, even though the weights, they weren't rolling the blacktop for parking lots and stuff like that. I don't know about any of our parking lots, but I just wonder if any of that, I mean, it's been several years that they've done it, and I haven't seen them go back in to redo it any. I just wonder if there's been any research on it. It is asphalt, but it's white.
Right.
And so it doesn't pull the heat in, and it doesn't seem to move as much because it's not dark, collecting that kind of heat. Now, I know you wouldn't want it where you have tractor trailers and stuff, but school buses was never a problem for it. I was just curious if there's been any more research from doing that, because you're not taking out and cutting out a whole section of concrete when you replace it. So it seems to held up pretty well for car traffic.
I believe you're talking about white topping, which is really concrete typically over an asphalt road. Rockwood did do that on Bembler Elementary and some other elementaries, maybe Green, not Green Plains, but
That's who they did.
that's few, yeah. So that might be worth us following up with Rockwood to see what their experience has been. The concrete industry has been pushing that for a while now, that concept. Usually there is a cure time involved, so it's not something that's easily done on a road. Parking lot, especially a school parking lot where you can close it down for the summer, is a great option. So I don't know that it has a lot of applicability to some of the things we do necessarily.
I don't know at all. I just think, we got parking lots in the parks, City Hall, all these other places where maybe it's a more cost-effective way of doing it. But I just know that they put a lot of research into it. I don't have any of the results. I don't know.
Well, it's probably worth our checking with Rockwood to see what their experience has been and keeping that potentially in our toolbox for future use.
All right, anybody else? Okay, would anybody care to make a motion to push this forward? Made by Ms. Edens, seconded by Mr. Albers. All those in favor of moving? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. That one passes too. Next up, capital improvement sales tax fund.
All right, so this one's gonna be the most interesting, so I'd like you to, well, really, we need to have a little bit larger discussion. We've added a ton of projects to our capital improvement, 5-year capital. The next year, I mean, last year we budgeted a similar amount to what we budgeted this year, and some of the projects just didn't get up to, sometimes that happens with federal projects, specifically 109, the shared use path. Sometimes you have issues getting easement. Luckily, we just got the easement we needed. For the 109 BA project, we expect to have that out this fall very soon. Some items I'll draw your attention to really quickly. On that first front page, you'll see that there's $1,010,724 that were originally budgeted for phase 2 of the internet. In this case, if you look at the estimate, I have it knocked down to 0 because for accounting, you should try to make that change when you actually have the expenditure listed that same year instead of just blowing up the actual fund reserve. So in that case, that would need something that would need a year-end budget amendment, but we could easily do that. So what we would see is for phase two, that 1,010,000 would go straight towards it. And then for the ARPA fund, we're anticipating that from interest over the last couple of years, we've able to garner about $476,000. So in that case, that would be a transfer out from the ARPA fund that would leave the $468,000 that we have in ARPA funds remaining. And that the idea here is to kind of separate the two, because for reporting to the federal government, you don't really want to have a contract or agreement where you're doing half and half, or half that's going towards like the city's paying in on a project when you should just be using ARPA funds. So really what this breaks down into is that for phase two, it may be broken into two separate agreements, one using ARPA funds and then one using the amount of money that we have set aside. So when you include that all up, we have approximately 1,400,000 and change going towards phase two in this budget. You also had the 468 in the ARPA fund, so it's approximately $2 million that would be going towards. So I can pull this up real quick. So I just wanted to note that, and you'll see that on the front page, the summary sheet, the transfer in. And then you'll also see from the TGA funds, 728, that was also budgeted last year for Route 109 BA, was 628,000. And then there was 100,000 put towards the Main Street extension. Both of those projects did not go out the door this year. So in that case, we did not want to make the transfer until those expenditures were actually expected. So in that case, so just bringing that up first and foremost, but the more important item is that, if you look at the revenue, and you take out, state grants and things along those lines, you just add the interest off the amount of money we have in the fund. But you also add in what we actually get from the 100% capital tax. We're looking at $3,275,000. What we're currently on pace for on this 5-year capital, we could do it for this next year. We could survive and do the 10 million. You could look at the phase two as a wash because it's technically ARPA funds, interest from ARPA funds and money from the charter settlement that is paying for the entirety of that. So that you can put to the side. But overall, we're at $10,212,000, and that's just based off us shifting the capital projects to the left. And that's really what it is. It's taking what was in 2025 and putting it there. So just wanted to bring that up so we could have a discussion tonight about next year, what is absolutely necessary. In this case, we do have a fund balance here, but to me, it was difficult with the 5-year looking at, you never really want to see us go into the red when it comes to having your balance emptied out. And if we spend as stated in the 5-year, after 2027, we're going to be at a deficit. We'd have to transfer funds in from the general fund to cover it. The way we fix that is either, enhance grant funding for some of these projects, but you can't have that done overnight. Or you remove a couple of the projects or you push them down the line. So in that case, I encourage everyone to take a look at the 5-year capital, and maybe we could walk through these and just kind of see where we're at. And is there anything missing? Obviously, we want to note that too, but it seems like we've almost got our plates full. In year 4 and 5, it seems to loosen up a bit, which is good. But even when we have a less heavy package of items coming in year 4 and 5, you're still at 1.4, which is approximately half of what we would be bringing in from the capital sales tax revenue. And then in year 5, we're almost at 2.6 million. So almost at 2.7 million. So we're already almost there. So I was talking with Chair Farmer and before this, and I was talking with Councilmember McCutcheon about a new process for the next year, which I think would be beneficial, of using an unfunded projects list and then using a priority matrix to rate those amongst all council members, and then add actual priority scores to each of the projects. And that is how we will fill in this fifth year, if you will. And on top of that, when ranking them, when we have this conversation before putting it on the actual capital program, using the actual revenue estimate that we have, because at this rate, we're going to be emptying our capital improvement sales tax fund, and quite frankly, we don't even have the staff really to take care of all these projects on their own. So I wanted to go through these tonight. This is in addition to all this concrete street resurfacing and the asphalt resurfacing we do, the grass cutting and going out and just doing more of the maintenance. These are the bigger capital projects. So I wanted to walk through these with everyone, have a discussion, or maybe we could just we could either go through them or just talk about them out loud, which ones may not be a top priority, the ones obviously that we have funding tied to, I mean, right now, you actually will see a change for the Route 100 J-turn construction and then the left turn lanes project construction. You'll see that those numbers decreased a little bit. You don't see any grant funding associated with them, but I did add a local partners in there because we had determined this is how much we actually are gonna have to pay to MoDOT, and then we're done. We no longer have to, we're not dealing with the actual construction component. We have designed it, we're gonna pay them. If there's overrun on the actual cost, we are subject to a certain percentage of that. But overall, that number is what we're gonna be paying for the project as is. So I just wanna make a quick note on those two, but other than that, next year, we've got quite a few projects in the hopper. I mean, we've got, well, I guess I'll turn it over. Right now, the main thing I wanted to call out is that I don't like, the department's not thrilled to show that we're spending $30 million on projects over the next 3 years, and we need to have a discussion. The council would, we can do this, but we would start really impacting our funding mechanisms. We are digging into the big bank.
Mr. Marshall.
The capital fund was never put in to fund parks. I mean, we went knocking on the doors to get that half a cent. That was for roads and bridges and that kind of infrastructure, but never once. Our goal was, once we built the first park, we'd get the taxpayers to come in and we could get a park tax for and water runoff tax. And to go in and do so, I mean, that half a cent ended up being almost $3 million. So the intent originally was never to try to fund and build all these parks out of that capital fund. The capital fund was for roadways. We didn't have that before 1999, and all of that came out of just our regular operating account. So I think that's the biggest thing, that any kind of water retention or any type of parks was never intended originally. Not that we can't leave it there, but when we start looking at it and picking things and priorities for it, when the voters passed that, it was passed for capital projects, roads and bridges and that kind of stuff, so.
I know you mentioned the possibility of increased grants. But realistically, do we have staff that has available hours to look for more grants and apply for more grants?
To be honest with you, it's tough. I mean, we can, as a council, if the council would like us to direct us to go after a specific project, go try to find funding, we'll unturn every stone, but right now the staff is, there is a lot being done. In the winter months, it's a little bit better, but towards the kind of calming down in the summer months, we're stretched pretty thin. But if you give us a project that, hey, let's go for funding on this, we can get it. Obviously, you see it all the time. We have federal funding coming for our bridges. We've got 109 BA. We've got the J-turns project that we're doing. There's a lot of things that we can do. It's just, we really want to hone in and give direct orders. Let's go get federal funding or state funding for X, Y, Z. So in that case, direction on that would be great too.
I just want to say, I want to thank the council. I know not everybody voted that way, but I do appreciate us keeping the charter settlement money and not doing some sort of trash rebate with it where $8 would have went to a household when that entire money could fund a very big project that was still desperately needed. So that was good fiscal planning. I appreciate the support. I know Ward 2 definitely did, but we've had this discussion in watershed erosion. Chair Farmer also chairs that committee. Because the funds aren't there for what we see as major infrastructure problems. In addition to what would go to the parks and sales tax, and I can tell you that if we pass that included stormwater, it still wouldn't cover some of the other things that we're concerned about. So I do see a need to bond probably for that in the future, and I'll share the comments that I made in that committee, which is that I think right now where society is at, we didn't even have the support on this council for internet use sales tax or Wayfair reform. And in my mind, it made sense to expand that first because your parks and stormwater sales tax only applies to local businesses. It doesn't apply to what's in the valley, right? And so you're milking the small businesses again, and you're not taking advantage of all of the internet sales. Whereas if you pass internet use first and then pass the stormwater tax could be a lot more effective. It would include those Amazon purchases, the Target purchases, because it would be the point of shipping that would help with that. But So the other comment that I shared and the Watershed Erosion Committee is my experience with volunteering for Monarch Fire Protection District, which was a tax increase for ambulances, staff, and replacement of cancer-causing equipment, is that we are in a very anti-tax society right now. And I think that's a really, really tough push, which is why I'd like to see us look at bonding for bigger ticket items. I just think that that's a easier sell right now. Rockwood has tried to transition away from that. Part of their thought process is, you know, one, bonding does cost the taxpayers more money. And it's not a reliable income source, whereas we can plan for our future better if we have a tax increase. But you've seen how hard it is for them to get that, because people generally like obligation bonds to be paid back. It makes them feel better as a voter. So we have other options. I just think we haven't explored them yet. And I see that as the viable means for the future, because I can't honestly say that I believe that voters would support a parks and stormwater tax next year. I don't know that they would. If they wouldn't support an internet use sales tax, and this council wouldn't even put on the ballot, I don't think we could sell it to the voters, because we're on record saying we have enough money and we don't need any more, unfortunately. So maybe can we look at some of these projects in the future to see what we could do different types of bonds for? A lot of these things, you know, we're still a new city comparatively, right? We're not as old as Manchester. We're still building out. A lot of these to me are one-time major expenses that then have a maintenance associated cost, but that cost is lower than building. You're not building the park 3 times, but it's part of our plan to become a bigger, better, more unified city. So if we could lump some of these together and then make a, you know, even if they're separate ballot initiatives in April, I mean, that might be better planning for the future. I think.
You gotta have, so I would say, I'll just say this because Tom and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and Mayor Garitano and I have had conversations about this. You know, you are correct. The reality of our situation here currently is, we'll just call it tax adverse.
Yeah.
That being said, there has been a pretty regular pattern, I think, of ignoring items that need to be taken care of, like the building we are sitting in, some of these other things, and instead just picking out a next shiny object that we think is cool, and then we'll figure this all out down the road. So I do think we need to go through, putting this matrix together, I think, is a great plan. As a council, it worked relatively well when we did our strategic plan as a group, but I do think it might work best if we, as our collective here, can just sort of come up with a concept of things that should appear on that list. So like, I kind of agree with that, like, these are not putting new stuff in parks is not what this is designed for. So some of these things are, you know, like, I'm just not to pick on anything, but I'm looking at like the Birch Forest improvements, replacing barrier curbs with rolled curbs to improve accessibility, traffic flow, and overall safety in the designated area. I don't know how bad the curbs are there. I imagine that they're still quite functional for some time. And we certainly have other things, whether it's watershed or the building or whatever, that need to be paid attention to in a much greater degree than they. So I'm almost wondering if there's an appetite for it. If we just need to come up with a direction, which we can certainly pass along to the full council to then give you guys to say, if it doesn't fall with, we want to see this matrix, but if it doesn't fall within these general parameters, let's just assume this thing is off of here until somebody decides they want to try to put it back on, and we can have that conversation at that point. Does that make sense to everybody?
I think we get hung up all the time because we lay out 5 years.
Right.
And then it's, well, why isn't that sooner? Why isn't that sooner? Well, if you only have $3 million, what $3 million would we spend first?
Right.
For those type of things. And I think it's great, you know, poor Joanne Yost, she gave us that 27 acres, but $100,000 for on a piece of property, or the Route 66 park, those are all great, but that's coming out of road and water erosion and all some of the other priorities. So maybe just kind of looking just like that and to say, hey, these are all things that are important. But another park versus trying to save some property with water erosion to me is not a real big discussion, you know?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have a feeling when we accepted some of the land for the parks, there's probably some sort of contractual agreement where we assumed certain improvements. So
That
that it
is
could
the
be
case.
open into a park. I don't know that we can
I don't
opt
know
out
that
of.
there's a time frame that's necessary for
That
that.
is the case, I believe, for Bellevue
Yeah,
Farms.
Bellevue, there's an
Yeah, but
agreement.
Bellevue's not even ours.
We have a maintenance agreement with a nonprofit, but it's. our-
But that's, yeah, but it's not the city project. It's still county property. We're just getting a lease on it.
I would just say we can probably look at whatever the legal ramifications are for certain things. I doubt very much that there's a specific time frame that's put in there, and if there is, then we can certainly cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think that it would make, assume, I don't know, Tom, you tell me, I think it would make your guys' life a lot easier if you could take out a good chunk of these things before that even gets to the next part of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting direction from the council here, because I mean, and the thing is, like I said, for the 2025 capital improvement sales tax fund budget that we have here, and that's, we can survive doing that, but I mean, if we do that for the next 2 years, it really wanted to just wave the yellow flag tonight to talk about it, talked about it at planning and parks as well. We've got to do something there, or we'll be heading in a negative direction and we'll be in the red, and that's not what we want to do.
Mr. Bros.
I think we're talking a lot about what we've already done, but what we haven't done is follow it. So, and I'm not gonna pick on the pickleball courts, but it's a real good example. Is that, as soon as we were done doing all of our strategic planning and the 5-year plan and prioritizing, I mean, that was completely done, and call it a month or two later, we had a great idea to add pickleball courts with an estimated cost of 100,000. And so one, it wasn't even within the 5-year plan, which again, that's a change by council. And now the cost has gone from 100 to 500, and we've moved it up to next year. So a lot of what we're saying we need to do, we've done. Now we just have to follow through. We have priority numbers that we all set. Maybe the composition of the council changes every 2 years or every year. But we had those numbers. And if we go back and this is what we said, now we can always change our mind, pickleball courts maybe being one of them. But we basically had something that wasn't even a concept, go up 500% in cost and move up to the front burner, which that if that's the decision we make. But I think we've been through that exercise, and I think internet was number one. I think erosion was number two, and just look at where erosion's at with respect to where the city's focused, say versus parks. I mean, I think parks was near the bottom, and so, but that's my comment on it. I think this list should have a number next to it in relating to where we have already said the priority is. And again, we can change our mind every meeting, we can change it, but we've already decided that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so Tom, what would your preference be?
We can either have a bigger discussion at the full council, or if you want us to go through these and provide a skimmy down, if you want to say a number and say, hey, outside of items that aren't funded by grants, take it off for next year, or whatever you guys want to do, that's fine. We're looking for a little direction, or we can bring this to the full council.
Yes, ma'am.
Since it's under park and trail development, and I know people have already spent, but I really, really agree with Councilmember Gross. Is it out of order for us to, I don't know, maybe take that $500,000 for the hard court and move it to the erosion budget?
Well, if we did that, what we would do is we would show that change via like a secondary copy, you know, we'd mark it with Department of Administration suggested edits or something like that. So
So-
that would be fine.
I would like to
But-
motion to do that because I just saw the bids for our other work.
For the trash enclosure.
Pardon?
Are you talking
No,
about
no,
the
for
trash
the-
enclosure?
For the
Watershed.
watershed stuff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All right, give 1 second on it.
I just have a question
Yes, ma'am.
on that, deferring it. How would that affect the donation of the land we're getting to put?
So so that part,
Oh,
if,
shoot.
yeah, if they go, they're,
I mean, I don't know that it does. I'm just,
So I would suggest this, again, this is maybe an attorney conversation. This is now the at least third version I've been involved with of whatever that project is supposed to be. And I would be willing to wager quite a large amount of money that that project is not going to be completed by the end of next year, at which point a pickleball court would be
Oh.
necessary. So it's, to me, and this is maybe a conversation, we need to look at the agreement, but like some of these other park arrangements, like that's a wonderful, really appreciate Mr. Cohn making that arrangement. I was one of the people, to be completely honest, I don't care about the pickleball court. I think it's a huge waste of money, but if we're gonna have them, we should have them here where people are going to be able to experience town center. But that being said, like, we're gonna get those pickleball courts built a lot sooner than we're gonna get whatever is going to sit next to the movie theater. Just based on our experience here. So like, to me, locking up this money for a year to not do anything with it seems sort of counterintuitive to what we've got going on. At the same time, putting a $500,000 on here that is 100% not going to be spent is also, I don't know, sort of silly to me.
Isn't this mixed use supposed to start coming out of the ground next spring?
Yeah, it was also supposed to start coming out of the ground last spring and
Year before
2 years
that.
before that.
I feel like we're closer.
the site development plan has been
In
reviewed.
architectural review, we
Yeah.
could go in over all the exterior, what they're using for all the everything. And maybe that was done before too.
Yeah, it was.
That's all that could be.
On the prime place. we
Even
all
the,
did.
the over 55 housing, that, look at the doors and windows and everything, yeah.
Yep,
They had a trailer outside.
they did. They had a trailer.
Double wide.
Um, Okay, so, what I would maybe, I'm happy, Lauren, if you would like to make that motion. I might suggest that as much as I would love to get that $500,000 over, it's gonna wind up being a bigger conversation for the council anyways. And I think it may do us a much greater service to point out a philosophy rather than specific stuff. We can do it. I mean, if you can, I'm happy to put that out there, but I just, to me, this is a much bigger conversation than just moving that $500,000 to one place.
I think you gotta deal with this too. I actually think that you should look at this future development of parks that we don't even have right
Yeah.
now.
Crazy.
Take that all off. I mean, if we're not obligated to it, 100,000 here, 100,000 here. I mean, you could come up with $500,000 over the next 3 years to start some bonding in order to do that. But to keep putting in and say, we're gonna need the Cone Park, that's been down there for 20 years.
Yeah.
You can't even get people to pick up trash here because it's poison ivy, but another $100,000,
Yeah.
you can't park down there. So I mean, I get it. I just think that that's where we could set some priorities and say, okay, anything that's not a capital improvement or not towards water erosion or internet, it just needs to be pushed back.
Yep. Mr. Brost.
Yeah, I mean, staying in that same context, why don't we push something out to the, from a standpoint of a discussion, say with the full council, which hopefully, there's enough time for it, but push it out to the right of expected grant funding, timing unknown, whatever it is, push it out there and then make the business case to move it forward. So, and again, I know we're gonna have a lot of emotion on the pickleball courts, but for example, maybe the pickleball courts is 26 or 27. because we have this potentially this multifamily development underway. I mean, I sort of feel the same way about the whole Village Green. I think we're, you know, it, we don't even have a main street. We're plopping down all this money. I mean, you hope everything falls in place, but I mean, I think it's the same scenario, but that one we're already underway, but I think, push them, take them all out, not to say what it's going to be, and then bring them back in. I don't know. I guess, Tom, from your standpoint, this is a starting point. This isn't based on that exercise, or maybe it is. But I would just push them out. And then we bring them back in based on the collective priorities of the council, and we've effectively have already done that. So and we need to do it routinely. And I think we've talked about that. I don't even know if we passed an ordinance or had some discussion to where we're supposed to do that maybe a couple times a year. I'm not sure. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prost. What I could say is that what we could do is, we could identify all of the projects that have federal funding attached to them, not estimated, but actually sign some, partnership agreements with them. Put those on a list, pretty much provide copy A and copy B, and just have all the other projects that are not federally funded on a separate list, and kind of do a plug and play type deal, but it will get kind of confusing just with the sheer number, but I mean, I'm fine with that. Department's fine with that.
Or
Don't we already have the expected grant funding? It's already on the sheet that I'm looking at now, right?
Yes, so anyone in there is where there's anticipated grant funds,
Right.
as in we think the project, some of them though is the project could be eligible. So,
I think it'd be important to know which ones.
Yeah, that's
Which
what I-
ones we
that's-
are legally obligated
that's
for
what I was
whatever
gonna
reason
say.
to do.
So,
that's what
and let's just say we'll pick on, the Cone Park repairs. If that becomes the most important thing of the year, well, then move it right up and get to it first. Those are all conscious decisions that I suspect many of these will not have a unanimous vote. And some will. I think the ones that are focused on, the roadway improvements, again, that falls into a higher priority for the city than adding another park. And we've been through this exercise. So I just think it'd be a good way to do it. And because you're right, on the other side is if we go down this path, this plan for a few years, our reserves are going to look different 3 years from now. So, okay, thanks.
Or
Two thoughts. The first being that because I don't sit on the Parks and Planning Committee, so I don't feel like I have enough knowledge to feel gung ho about axing an entire, other half of the council's work that sits on that. Maybe some of you do. But my thought is what I would like more information on. So let's say it's a park item and we spent money on it in 2025. Is there anything wrong in, pick whatever example that you want, when we get to 2026 or 2027, then delaying those two fiscal notes? Or is it such that because we spent it in 25, we already started the project, we have to finish it and for a penny and for a pound?
Well, I mean, that's why we try to like knock it out. Some say like
Some-
design, some say right
Yeah.
of way. Typically, when you're doing a capital project, you're gonna do preliminary design, you're gonna get an estimate. At that point, you're gonna go out, you're gonna get revised set of plans that are gonna then show, hey, here's your easement that you gotta acquire, then you do property acquisition. Once you get property acquisition, you'll go through, a revised planning phase. Once you actually, that's the other issue.
Is that what you're saying, like for Bellevue Farm? So just because I spend the 35,000 in 2025, does that mean that I have to spend the 175 in 2026?
You don't have to, but that's,
What I'm
this is, whenever you approve, you're approving tonight. Well, the council, when they approve the budget, they're not just approving the budget, they're also, more so solidifying the 5 year. you're approving the plan. So but the thing is, you're the council.
Right.
At the end of the day, if you want to spend the 100 or the 35,000 on Bellevue design next year, and then you actually wanna, and then the year after that, you're like, we don't wanna do it anymore, it's up to you. That is complete, and then the thing is, that's why we have this review process, cause then the 5-year capital improvement plan can be revised every year. I mean, it's supposed to be an annual review. So at any time, you can always say, especially looking at this year, and then I would almost not even get hung up too far on the following years. Look at this year, upcoming year's budget. And then really, what are the most important items there, and then go from there.
Yes, sir.
You know, it sounds like the turnover of the city council every year contributes to a whole hell of a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Most of them.
Yeah, wow. Maybe that's the bigger problem.
It's correct.
They always been 2-year terms?
Yeah,
Yes.
yep. And it's staggered, so it's really.
Yeah, but it's
Everyone.
something, half of it's turning over could be turning over every year.
Every year you can take your anger out.
So, just kind of along the parks and planning conversation, because none of us are on that, I don't think, right?
I was on it last year.
So what, I mean,
We had this similar discussion. I was there, yeah.
so. Does the attitude of that committee, I mean, part of what they're there for is to do parks, but like, is it more? I know when I've been on in the past, it's been more like, let's build more parks instead of taking care of old parks. Is that still the direction we're?
I think everyone, even at that committee too, even though it's parks is their primary focus of planning, but I think there was sentiment that, yeah, we probably need to take a closer look. It wasn't necessarily saying, hey, throw out the park stuff,
Right.
but they were, I think everyone's in agreement, at least from these 2 committee meetings, that, we gotta take a closer look at some of the projects and the plan.
We got more parks than our neighboring communities.
And I think the reality of it is the fact that, and we've had these discussions just as the whole council for years, is there are things that you need, once you get them done, you need to keep them updated and repaired. Don't let them get destroyed and then come back and spend twice as much money. But at the same time, don't jump into a new park when you can't maintain what you have. And I think the biggest thing from the parks and planning side is missing. They're not stopping to look at where that money's coming from. Grants are grants, and it's the long-term maintenance that eats our lunch.
Well, that's actually, that's a good point you bring up there, because that's the discussion we really had. I tied it together with an increasing park maintenance budget to, hey, with us adding assets, you're also you see the capital improvement sales tax fund, but you might not put it together if you're not looking at everything all at once and really doing a deep dive, that also is inflating our operating budget as well.
So I still would like my original motion, and here's why. I understand what you're saying. It's part of a bigger discussion at council. But what I've learned about this council with different people on it in the past is that people really, really, really don't like budget amendments that are made on the floor and then they're expected to vote on them at that meeting, which is why I would rather have the recommendation come out of this committee for that $500,000 from the pickleball court to go to the watershed erosion, just because I've seen other people try to move stuff, whether that's for sunshades, and it hasn't gone well. And we have just spent a lot of time talking about this, and there is less than 8 of us in the room. So imagine when all 16 people are present, it's gonna be like a can of worms. And so I just wanna chip this off, and if people don't agree with it, they don't agree with it, but at least I put guardrails on the conversation.
Okay,
So I'm gonna axe the pickleball court and move it to watershed.
all right. So Lauren's making a motion to move the pickleball money over to watershed. Would anybody care to second? See, what do you want to say?
Second it.
I
Well, hey, Joe,
sir,
I guess the reason I don't really want to pick a single item. And that's why I probably wouldn't vote in favor of that. I really want us to go down, like I'm in favor of moving the pickleball courts out of 25, as well as I'm in favor of taking anything that's not critical and move it out and then build the case to move it back. And because if the 500 for pickleball, moving it to erosion implies that we have the 500 to spend on erosion. But part of this exercise is to come down to, what is the amount of money we have to spend each year? And yes, I do think erosion is underfunded in light of our arrived priority of that item for the city. I mean, we got twice the funding for pickleball courts, and it wasn't even a discussion point. So we really drifted. So I think there'll be a lot of pushback on the pickleball courts, but I do think that I just feel we need to push them all out and then make the case to put it back. And that case to put it back is not that it would be great for the city, but it'd be great for the city. And it's more important than the other 6 items that it's competing for those funds. So that's, I don't know if that's a different motion for that. I mean, I think it takes what Lauren's saying, but I'm expanding it. Because right now we're just spending too much money on things I don't think are critical for the city. But that's me saying that. And somebody else, the world might end if we don't get 4 or 5 more parks. So I don't know. I don't know where we stand on a second there. So
In that case, well, Tracy, you got something?
No, I was just gonna say before the next meeting, because it will be a long discussion, any details that we can get on like what are the improvements that are being proposed for Bellevue, and like, is that something that needs to be done right away? Is it a maintenance, like any details that we can have on any of the things so that people aren't asking.
Improvements, like, if we were, that's a good, my question, like, is it a repair or is it making something?
No,
That's,
well,
you know what I'm saying?
it could be different, and that's what, there's a description for the next year's, but when you start going out, then we don't write them all down, but there is a section here that describes each project, but for the Bellevue specifically, that is just really more so designing.
Yeah, 100-acre site that is part of the Merrimack River Gateway and offers an opportunity to the city and its partners to create a wildlife retreat in a setting of native plantings, mature woodlands, and historic structures. Isn't that what is currently there?
Yeah, so it's designing.
It's being overgrown by the invasive
Yeah, and
stuff.
Maybe it's the same vein. I don't think I could vote on this because I don't know how we went from 100,000 to 500,000 to be able to,
To about a month.
no, well, why?
It's a great
How many
question.
courts? I don't know any
It
of
got
this.
crazy.
There are 4 pickleball.
Yeah, I mean, it's
courts that are-
pickleball courts that are mixed use for basketball and stuff.
Yeah, I understand.
But it was a liquor, I would suggest everybody's interpretation is different.
Yeah.
Having been here when it happened, it went from being non-existent
Yep.
to an absolute, like the top priority of the city in about one conversation.
Okay.
And there was people that were really willing to die on that hill. Some of those people are no longer on the council, so that conversation may be very different now.
I love playing pickleball, but I don't need it here to play, and
Right.
things, but I don't know. From where, it seems like a vast amount of
Yeah.
change
A
for
lot.
1 month. It happened?
I mean,
Well,
it bloated very, very quickly.
okay, wow.
So, okay, so let's do this. So Lauren, I agree with you on the moving the money. I would like to do that very much, but to me, it's more of a process question than a need question.
Bet you can find it from this other.
Yeah, I am kind of more in agreement with Larry in terms of just like, let's move all of these things out and then have people make the case to move them back in, whether it's you guys or us or whatever it is. I think if things are not like legally obligated or the building isn't gonna cave in, which it might, we don't know yet. Those are the things that are much more in priority to me. Because I think no matter what we do, if you don't, as you said, Tom, if we don't get our arms around this thing here quickly, it is going to balloon. We've got new people that'll be in here in April, so it'll be a whole new conversation, a whole new learning curve, and it's a lot to take in very quickly. So is that, does that, I mean.
You have to have a line item vote in November on each thing.
I mean, the problem is we gotta decide this stuff now.
Next week.
Yeah,
No.
And another council meeting.
But I mean, to put this out there, we've
Yes,
got
there
to
is
start.
there is a council meeting next week, but this will be discussed during work session
Yeah.
where there should be open discussion.
Right.
Then public hearing won't occur until November.
Right, but what I mean is like, we don't have
Oh, I
an
know.
enormous amount of time.
That's
to
why
get it
I
figured
thought
out.
we-
Yes, that is true.
Be voting on it line by line in November
So-
through the process.
How much money are you looking for the watershed project?
$40 million.
I know. How much money would you use if you were to set up a priority?
So if we were to do basically what we've been advised, so I think that, and we just got the numbers, which I haven't seen yet in terms of the master plan, right?
Well, they're not necessarily numbers. It was more so how the breakup would work.
So based on our last meeting, kind of the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak, would be $200,000 to add capacity to the retention and detention basins, a couple specific ones.
Right.
So if we were able to do that, according to the USGS, well, we have, and tell me if I get this wrong.
Plus
Lauren.
3 new locations recommended by
Yeah,
USGS.
possibly finding 3 more locations, which
We'd have to,
would be difficult.
Yeah.
But, so the idea would be, you know, like, for instance, the triple meander, which is at Clayton and Strecker.
Right.
Is probably now a $4 million fence. It is very bad, it is very dangerous, it is also at least $4 million. And that is to just fix what is there, it doesn't solve any other problems that we have going on.
and we own it.
And that is a city thing. So, you know, in my heart of hearts, I would love to get a couple $1 million in there to actually do some things. Part of the thing that we've done now is we wait for the state to come in and give us money, which they just don't seem to want to do. So for a couple $100,000, we can take out, I think she said like 25% of the capacity flow.
Yeah, but we also have those 4 other projects too that are over 500,000 total.
I know, I'm just saying like,
Yeah.
incrementally to like. Not to start to fix the problem
Right.
rather than fixing.
And all I'm saying is, I just think an approach to the council
6 million.
would be to say, this is where we are right now.
Yeah.
We have a reserve, but we are also spending money here for things that are not as critical
Yes,
as this.
Yep.
So the positioning then would be turned around to say, if we could come up with 500,000 or 600,000 to start the process.
Mhm.
But I think the bigger issue too is, and I know people are against taxes, but I think if you communicate it right, I mean, we're
Right.
not door to door for the capital, that half a cent.
Yep.
People's, they're never gonna pass it. They passed it right away.
Right.
But we need to show them what's gonna be done with that and build that success story. But I think if you go back and
sounds like a
say,
great job for Gina.
this is what we, this is what we need to do right away.
Mhm.
And then all of the other support with grants and that kind of stuff. But then also, don't take it off the board that we do need to get another revenue source.
Yes,
But in the meantime, we also don't have to be building a half a dozen new parks for
Right.
another $2-3 million. Plus, we do have a reserve.
Yep.
So using part of that reserve to get that going, I think that's sellable. But I'd put it in that order.
I
And
agree.
say,
Yep.
this is the way to do it, and then here's where we can get some of the short-term money. And then what do we do long-term in order to try to lay it out some? Because there's some who probably don't think it's a problem at all, and there's others who,
yeah, I think we've done a good job over the last few years to get people to really understand that it is a problem, and I think it's helpful. We've invested money to get the study from the government that tells us that it not only is the problem that we thought it was, it is much worse.
So I think we do need to communicate that better out of the committee. So could we get a memo attached when we go into this work session that says the most recent updates from Watershed? So that's gonna include if they have the estimates ready on the 3 additional new places. They probably won't, but we just need to float that out there.
But we can do the other one. We know those other
We
ones.
know the other ones, we know the other projects and the cost of the master plan
Well,
because.
yeah, that's a component too, out of that 500,000 that's listed here, that is
Master plan.
master plan stuff too, so.
Yep.
It's-
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part of it. I mean, that's gonna be a couple $100,000 for sure.
Right.
And
So
that's not just 1 year either.
No, I know, that
Yeah.
is,
The point is, if I had that money, I would be, we have projects identified that are already in the design phase that we could spend immediately. We're ready to, if we had an extra $500,000, we could already appropriate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're to that point.
Okay.
I try to put that into the budget then for next year.
Yeah, I think we need a memo with this.
I'll put my very persuasive hat on. I'll do my very best. Okay, so that's been a good conversation. So Tom, I know this has been a lot for everybody, I'm sure. What do you need from us?
In this case, I mean, so what we can do is we can just list the projects that, we can list what's provided here tonight, so you have that as an exhibit at the council meeting next week, but we could also provide a list of projects that, what it looks like if we just did the ones that we're obligated to do via grant funding and I pretty much wrote down, you know, if it's dealing with internet, which you notice the total was actually zero in the capital improvement sales tax fund cash, erosion, it's improving our roads or doing a system improvement on roads or bridges, those, they stay. Anything outside of that is just a no, or if it's doing like
Well, if somebody wants to make a very persuasive
well,
argument,
and it'll be included on another, so what I was thinking is that you provide this, but then, hey, the refined version would be just this, but stripped down to its very, very basic nuts and bolts, and it'll be like a version A.
Or prioritize and do half the repair and maintenance. You know, because sometimes we do the whole thing where maybe you don't have to do the whole thing if you had to.
okay, so do you need a motion or anything? Or are you good?
Motion to proceed with this, motion to proceed,
Poor guy.
forward this to the full council with, forward this as presented tonight, but also forward a secondary attachment that lists out the projects that are absolutely necessary in the sense that we have federal funding tied to them, or they're hitting the, they've been already approved by council by ordinance, like the high friction surface
Yeah,
treatment.
or the legally obligated. because we
Legally
did this.
obligated, so like absolutely mandatory projects for the 2025, and then for the 5-year, then that'll be more of just a bigger discussion, but
I
next
might,
year.
hell, it might be easier. Keep this going one more time. Tell us what is legally required. That is document A. And document B is, here's all the other stuff. And then let us fight it out.
And it should have been everything that
we
was
have
on
approved
last year's,
grant funding.
yeah, last year's budget should be the place to start. I mean, that's what was approved before that.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Does that make?
Plus a watershed memo.
Yeah. Yeah, the additional watersheds. And I can write this back to you tonight. Okay,
I don't know if Amy's got all that.
close. So Amy,
Well, I mean, there's been a little back and
yeah,
forth,
so
so.
Amy, I think, tell me if this is, if it simplifies it, I mean, you can do it. It sounded complicated the way you were talking about. I don't know.
No, I got it. It's, Amy, there's providing 3 documents, a watershed memo providing the most up-to-date information. It's the legally required items per the capital improvement sales tax fund that's listed here tonight. And then there's the extra items, which I'm gonna be providing this and a secondary document that shows the absolute necessities.
And I would just add in there if it's possible, like, I don't know, if there's some thing, I got Bellevue Farms up here. So if like, as part of that, whatever we agreed to, it's like, this has to be done by 2028 or whatever it is. Include those dates for whatever they are. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't even know, who wants to make that motion? That sounded cool.
What he said.
All right.
I will, I think everybody has the idea what to do.
All right, motion by Mr. Marshall, seconded by Ms. Nyan. All those in favor of this very convoluted conversation, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
Lauren's
You're
opposed.
the one naysayer. I'm bitter about.
I'm gonna get you a you hate pickleball button.
That's right.
Any abstentions?
Slashes.
Okay, that motion.
It's a big deal.
Last up, looks like our review of the right-of-way and parks maintenance bids.
Pass that over.
Chair Farmer, council members, as we do every year this time of the year, and I think this was presented to you earlier at our prior meeting. We are wanting to move forward with our 2025 public roads and parks maintenance contractors. We opened bids at the end of September. And we have 21 bids that we'd like to include contracts for 2025. Of the 21, 19 are existing contractors that we're currently working with. We do have the 2 new contractors, which would be Lift Right for sidewalk repairs and America's Marking for pavement markings. So we have developed contract amounts, tentative contract amounts for those 21 contractors, which are based on the budget that has been presented to you this evening. And those amounts vary. I would tell you that T Hill Construction is doing the lion's share of our work next year, which is not unusual. That has been the case for a few years now. And then following T Hill, we've got Glenn Gailey back working with us, primarily doing parks work. So he's got a decent sized contract. And then Omni Tree Service has always continued to do a fair amount of work for us with tree removal and tree trimming. So those are probably the big three out of the 21 contracts that we are recommending tonight. If there's any specific questions that you have, I'd be glad to do my best to address them. Otherwise, the recommendation is to move forward with 21 contractor bids, contracts for 2025 with those contractors tonight.
All right, any questions or concerns?
Any big surprises, Rick? When you do this every year, so you come in lower than you thought, or came in differently than you thought, or aren't doing it anymore?
No big changes. T Hill, as I understand it, actually held their prices this year. I don't believe they provided us an increase, and sometimes we do see that. So that's nice. That's not unusual. A lot of times they'll give us an increase and then they'll basically set it up for 2 years. They don't tell us that, but that can be a nice surprise. So they provide us an increase. This year they held their prices.
The good thing is there's still a lot of people bidding on it. I mean, some years you get there and nobody bids on it. It's kind of scary. So I'll make a motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Marshall, seconded by Mr. Alpert. Any other questions before we get into this thing? All right, all those in favor of pushing our right-of-way budget and right-of-way and parks maintenance bids forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. That motion passes. That gives us, takes us to miscellaneous. Anybody have any miscellaneous items? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I know that with Mike on board now, we kept saying that that was gonna save us a lot of money in consulting work from an arborist. Did that show up anywhere in the budget? I didn't see it. I was just curious because when you hire somebody thinking you're gonna eliminate consulting work, you probably kind of expect that to come out of the expenses.
From what from what I heard, it has come out thus far, in terms of like the expense of getting rid of trees and things like that. But I think the expectation is that side of it is what we can start up here.
I mean, I think the short answer is we had previously hired David Resource Group to provide consulting services in that regard. We did not do that in 2024.
I just make that note in your.
And we
notes,
don't have
because
plans
I
to do
think
it
the question will come up is, oh, we have an arborist. What aren't we gonna be spending? And I think that's the kind of stuff that I'll get.
Yeah, and he actually, Mike he has been trying to keep tabs on some of the things that he's doing that are a direct savings to us that he might have otherwise had a contractor do, and I can be prepared to address that as well.
Larry, you got something else?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I don't want to get Thomas too upset with me tonight, but now this is separate from, talking about investments in that, but there's one area within the operating of the city that we have not gone out for bids in years. And I think we should maybe state the reasons why, and that's our banking. So we, I was in banking. We would fight hard to have various corporate accounts. And I got a feeling those corporate accounts that we were fighting for probably ended up saving money by going out to bid. So I think we should, I think we should just go out to bid, but if there's this reluctance to go out to bid, we may not be getting the best deal out there, but I think we should also state why this is one area that, unlike say the 21 bids we just went over, year after year, we don't bid out our banking services. And And we really don't know if we're leaving money on the table or not. But I suspect we might be, but we don't know because we don't go out to bid on it. So that might be something to state the reasons why we're not doing that, or perhaps go ahead and do it. And it doesn't have to necessarily be tied to the budget, but it should be tied to an activity. And Ed, I don't know if you're aware of any time during your time with the city if the city's gone out to bid for banking or not. So, but that's just I'm not sure why that's never at least in my time it's never been done. So okay, thank you.
I know that they have change banks over the time period, but I think then it became what was working well and what seemed to be comfortable for everybody, but.
That's been the main, I mean, just to be transparent, it's the main reason everyone's comfortable with it, and we use it a lot, obviously with the amount of payments we make, so that, but we can definitely go out to bid.
As soon as you hire a new finance officer too, I think I'd wait and try to do that when you have.
Well, that would be beneficial too, and right now, we're trying to get through budget with our consultant that's serving in that position, but I definitely agree with you, and we have the full-time individual on board. I think that's gonna be, I mean, that's their job, so that would be good.
All right, any other miscellaneous items? Okay, our next meeting is in December, nothing next month?
Nothing next month, it's in December, paid is correct as listed.
All right, we will be back on December 3rd, and with that, I would be happy to take a motion to adjourn. Made by Tracy, seconded by,
One miscellaneous comment. I'm
Sure.
so sorry. I know everybody wants to leave. I just wanted to let you all know, I heard back from some folks in Strucker Farms. I know you've been monitoring AT&T when they've been done doing their UVerse expansions and you dealt with it. They did knock the power out for part of the homes in the area, not everybody. And so I know they're hitting lines and then went back and redid them. So just so you know,
cool.
that's it. That's all I got.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn. Anybody care to make the second? Made by Ms. Edens. All those in favor, please say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? You can stay here all night if you want. Any abstentions? All right, we'll see you guys in December. Thanks, everybody.